Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. I hope you're safe and well. Today, I'm delighted to have a guest come back and give me an update on how things have been developing in the digital lab space. I'm delighted to be joined by Cindy Novak DeLaurell, who, when I last spoke to her, was the Lab Operations Systems Manager at Bristol Myers Squibb. And she's still at Bristol Myers Squibb, but I think her role might have changed, and I'll let her talk about that in a bit more. But last time I caught up with Cindy in February, and we talked about all issues around digital labs, what the common questions were she were asked. And actually, I just watched it earlier today, actually, and I forgot how passionate Cindy is about digitalization. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about how the first 6 months have gone and her views in terms of the market now. So Cindy, lovely to see you. No palm trees behind you this time, though.
No, I just went with the normal office today. So
well, how have you been anyway?
fantastic, very, very busy, and just really excited to be here. It's great to see you, great to talk with you again. Life has just been really fantastically busy and all in a positive way.
Fantastic.
You mentioned my new role. So that's,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the new role at Bristol Myers is keeping me really busy. I've expanded my role, so I still support our manufacturing site, but I'm now responsible for all of the sites in the greater Seattle area, which includes a new R&D site that I'm now responsible for as well. So expanding my scope and learning a lot of new things and some brand new challenges. So it's been fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, that's perfect, actually, because we can talk about maybe some of those new challenges that you're facing and what your views are on them as we go along. So for those who are familiar, I mean, obviously you talked about your current role, but what is your background for those people who are not familiar with you?
Sure. So I've been involved in pharma and biotech and the IT side primarily for about 30 years. And most of that has been enterprise systems, LIMS, ELNs, things of that nature, MES. And then since I've joined Bristol Myers a year ago, I am now supporting all the lab systems in manufacturing and, as I said, now in R&D as well, integrating them with other systems. We're investigating wearables. We're investigating labs of voice in the lab. And so really exciting times, a lot of really good things happening in the space, and digitalization is right at the forefront of that.
Brilliant. So you obviously speak at a lot of events, and you also sort of chair a lot of panel discussions at events. That's how we got to speak earlier in the year. So I know you've been at a lot of events for the first 6 months of this year. Have you seen any sort of trends develop from the talks and the events that you've been attending over the past 6 months?
Great question. And I have. One of the things that I'm really finding everybody is talking about is the impact of the pandemic on digitalization and how we all operate, both in the lab and in the office space. But the other thing that we're all talking about is knowing we're coming out of the pandemic. What is that going to look like? How do you translate that? Do we all have to go back to the office full time? People don't want to. People don't want to go back to the lab full time. And so it's been a really interesting conversation on how we navigate that, how we move forward and still more effective, and where do some of these new digital tools come into play? Things, like I said, I mentioned wearables, I mentioned voice. Voice in the lab is actually really interesting because you can translate that into even a home office. So yeah. I can still dictate my notes, I can check my run, I can do this all digitally, and it's fantastic. So it's been really an interesting conversation. I've learned a lot. And with my new role, I'm actually finding that some of these things are tools that we're investigating at BMS and that we're starting to look at using. So we're actually doing some proof of concept with both wearables and with voice in the lab.
Well, that's quite interesting about voice in lab, because I've done an interview with one of the voice in lab companies talking about, and then digital assistants, if you want, for another phrase of it. So when we spoke in February, you obviously said a lot of your focus then was about quality and regulatory and sort of getting rid of paper end to end. That was one of your key focuses. So how has that developed, and how does something like voice in the lab or digital assistants help you with that?
So on the manufacturing side, we're actually not doing the voice assistant. We are making slow but steady progress with getting rid of paper. We've got some of our forms have actually been moved to digital forms now. So yay, we're excited about that. It's been very well accepted by the user community. They're excited about it to not have to do paper. It has been a little bit challenging because applying things, simple things like digital signature and having a proper certificate. We're still not on the BMS network per se. And so all of the digital certificates come from BMS, but aren't usable on our network. So we've had to find ways to work with that. And so we use AWS and other tools like that, so we can still do our digital signing. And my team in particular is everything we do, it's mandated. I've mandated to my team, it is 100% digital. I don't want to see paper forms. I don't want to see wet signatures. It was a little bit tough to get everybody to buy into it, but my whole team now is 100% on board. And my new team in Seattle was already there. And so it actually just lends credence to it. And it's been a great transition, just getting rid of some of that paper. So I see a lot fewer paper forms now, which is exciting.
Cool.
A lot fewer things to archive.
Yeah, well, that's true. So obviously you said you moved over, you're also looking after the R&D side as well. So what are the challenges you see or are you facing there in terms of digitalization?
The biggest thing is really the technology from the networking. So everything, it's a legacy or a heritage cell gene site. And we have one of our ELN or one of our products is actually an off-site company. So it's a third party. And we have communication issues with them and their site and their network. And it's not something I can't just walk in and go, okay, I'm going to go fix this and go check it. So it's been a little bit of a coordination thing there and getting them to understand the criticality for our site and for my users in Seattle. And so that's been an ongoing conversation. The other is just the sheer volume. To be honest, we brought on, I think it was 80 new instruments this year. We've got a huge expansion going for through 2022 with probably another 50 instruments and associated computers. And they've all got to be hooked up to Benchling or to a number of other systems, but Benchling's our big one. And so it's just crazy to see, and we're trying to transition who manages which pieces. So if it's what we call a kiosk, it's a thin client, that's not my team, but historically it has been. So getting that transition while we're still building out has been probably our biggest challenge is having that happen in a timely way and have the users not lose their support or their sense of getting full support. So it's been a good challenge. It's a lot of fun. Great folks that I'm working with.
And what about the data that you generate then from both manufacturing and the R&D side, and also in terms of how that data can be reused, analyzed, and also talk to each other as well in terms of, having the same sort of common language? Because I know, again, speaking to a lot of vendors and what they're pushing out there, I mean, one of the challenges obviously is you have got, like you mentioned, so many different instruments, so many different vendors, so many different bits of software, trying to get them all to talk, and they're all generating masses and masses of data, which in R&D, obviously you want to reuse data as much as possible rather than having to start again from the very beginning. How do you sort of overcome that particular problem?
We're working on it. So it's interesting because one of the things, and I believe last time we spoke, we were talking about putting an archive tool in place. And right now everything is going on a file share, which makes me cringe. But we actually are moving forward later this year with using New Genesis, which means that things will be properly archived and therefore reusable and viewable by other sites. Transition between R&D and manufacturing. One of the really nifty things about the site in Seattle is that R&D site moves everything into the manufacturing site I was already supporting. And so having that flow is really, really helpful because I can take the tools that we're putting in place. So we're already looking at New Genesis there for archival. We're working with Benchling. We're working with several other companies to basically get that data all properly organized. I know that there's a larger team in New Jersey looking at, I believe it's allotrope, for some of that whole data normalization. And so it's really being part of R&D now. I have a much broader view into what we're doing as an overall organization. And so that whole integration piece has been really focused on making that data available, making it reusable, making it readable and consistent, not just at my site, but across all the sites. So it's a much bigger project. There's hands from New Jersey, from Europe, from San Diego, from Washington. So it's been really an interesting expansion of that visibility into the data.
And do you think that the fact that you do have that visibility of both manufacturing and R&D, that's actually helped a lot? Because now, because like you said, you had the data coming in from R&D to the manufacturing in the first place anyway, but now because you're overseeing both, you're able to make sure that there's more consistency in terms of how things work, and everything works a bit more smooth than it was before.
And that's so true. And a great example of that is we've got several new instrument families that we're bringing in, that we've brought in Dexter, Seattle, and we're now putting them in the manufacturing space. And because I manage both teams, I can tell my team in the manufacturing side, go look at the documentation and how we did it in Seattle and do it the same way, because you get the same data setup, you get the same backups, you get the same type of data you're capturing, which makes it far more usable. It's so important, and people overlook this. It's so important to be able to utilize the manufacturing data as well. When you go back and do more research, or you want to expand the use of a drug or something like that, it's so important to see what you've got data-wise from the manufacturing side as well. And people just don't think about it. They just focus on the R&D side, and you really need to look at that.
Sure. And so early on, excuse me, I'm about to cough, so I better take a coffee just before I don't choke. The beauties of doing a live recording. You mentioned that obviously people may not want to stop remote working, and the remote working might be here to stay in a flexible way, maybe not 100%. So do you think, though, that means that digitalization will continue to accelerate, or do you think people sort of stop at a certain point and go, well, that's enough for the moment, we don't want to do it anymore?
Honestly, I think that now that ball is rolling, there's no way to stop it. It's so important to be able to keep that ball rolling. And I don't think that you're going to see it. It might slow down, but you're not going to see it stop. There's so much, people are so into it now and expect it and realize the value, that I think it might look different, but we are absolutely going to continue down that path. And I think that everybody will benefit from it. R&D will, pharma will, our patients will at the end of the day, because what we found is you can get things to the patient sooner. We get it out there faster because of digitalization. And you can't go back and say, okay, it's now going to take me 10 years to develop a drug because it takes too long to do all the paperwork and all the documentation. That's not an excuse anymore. We're expected to get things to market much, much faster now. And the only way to do that is to continue to move forward with digitalization.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point, because I was just thinking while you were talking that obviously I've been speaking to a lot of people actually who are talking about small batch manufacturing now, and obviously with personalized medicine. So again, and Pharma 4.0 and all that stuff. So again, with all that stuff, then that obviously then lends itself very much to digitalization and encourages more digitalization, I presume, in manufacturing.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we have our product approved back in February, and we're already moving forward to get it approved in other countries and expand that usage. And so to do that, again, you've got to digitalize. It's just so key to moving that forward in a timely manner. We've already started doing our first runs for Japan and for other countries. And that's a hard one to get into. So to be able to say, okay, we're doing the US, we're doing South America, we're doing Europe. Hey, we're doing Japan already. It's only 4 months. That's really, really exciting. And you can't do it if everything's on paper. So you have to have that integration, that full digitalization.
Right, that's fantastic. So looking ahead then, I mean, I'm sure you've got lots of events lined up that you are going to be attending and cheering and speaking at going forward. So what's the next 6 months looking like for you then, in terms of your plans, not just attending events, but in terms of development within the R&D manufacturing site?
So we'll start with the speaking engagements. I have 3 right now that are lined up. I have one next month at Smart Lab, so really excited about that. I've been doing stuff with them for many, many years, and I'm leading a panel discussion. Honestly, I don't even remember the topic, but I'm sure it's around digitalization. And then I have 2 of them in November, so rapid fire. One is on the same topic, digitalization and all of that. The other is on asset management. And I never would have gotten into that whole conversation. And I'm actually doing a full presentation on that one. And that never would have happened if I hadn't moved into this role at Bristol Myers. Right, so it's really, really exciting. And when I first agreed to do that, I was only at the manufacturing site. So now that I have both sites under me, it's going to be even so much better a talk. So I'm super excited. Those are live events or in person. So my first in-person events, and they are both in November. So I can get you that information later. And
great. We'll put it up above the video there so people can see.
And so really, really excited about both of those. As far as in general, right now we're looking at planning for the next year. My focus is primarily on the R&D side. And, my guys on the manufacturing side are pretty self-sustaining, which is fantastic. I still do a lot of consultation. I get to work on the big projects. My R&D side, I have 3 times as many instruments and half the size on the team. So our focus really is on becoming more efficient. How much can I put and make digital? How much can we hand off to other teams? Or just run it more efficiently. And that's really going to be my focus for the next 6 months. But at the same time, we've got lots of new instruments coming. We're talking with my colleagues in New Jersey and partnering with them. So there's so much going on, and just finishing up the integration activities, which we're hoping by the end of 2022, we will consider ourselves fully integrated, right up until we buy somebody else and we get to do it all over again. And that's Pharma for you. We're always buying and acquiring. And so it'll be a lot of fun. Always a good challenge.
Right. Now, I also know, because I follow you on LinkedIn, that you work with a non-profit organization. So tell me a little bit about that.
You must be talking about Rise Up Project. I am so excited to have joined this organization. It was actually started about a year ago by a former colleague that I worked with at Allergan many years ago. And our focus is helping out folks joining or rejoining the workplace. And right now we have a basic curriculum that helps you focus on your LinkedIn profile, interview skills, resume writing, things like that, your basics. We do a 6-week boot camp. After the boot camp, we get so many testimonials back. And they're so excited. Hey, this is a job. I have more confidence. And it's fantastic. And I joined a couple months ago to help build their advanced curriculum. And that's focusing on Office 365, leadership and soft skills. And we might do a project management module as well. And about 3 weeks ago, I also agreed to head up there to help support their social media team as well, which means that I'll be helping. I won't be posting, but I will be helping plan how we strategize for YouTube, for LinkedIn, for Twitter, and how we communicate out to the public and get the word out with great partner organizations. And so I'm really excited to be part of this team, because I think that they're going to do some great things for folks.
Fantastic. Well, it's a very worthy cause. So again, I'll be happy to share the link to that above the video if people want to get more involved with that as well. So I'll be happy to do that. Right. Cool. Well, Cindy, you know what? Time always flies when I talk to you. We've covered quite a lot of stuff already. I mean, I suppose my only final question for you is, what do you see the future for the lab and pharma around digitalization? Because do you think everything will eventually become automated and there'll be very few live people ever in the lab now, and everyone will be working remotely and so on? And AI, I mean, we haven't really talked about it, but machine learning and AI is now such a big area. Not just in pharma, but in life in general. And algorithms and so on. Do you think that is now the future in terms of pharma, or do you think people and with all their experience and knowledge are still very important within the process?
I believe that we have to have that human element. And a lot of it is around the machine learning, and the AI is great. We need it. It's going to help us become more efficient. But they can't make human decisions. And so much in pharma, from what you decide to develop, what diseases do you go after, clinical trials, all of that really is so much based on the human factor. And it's very important. And you can get robotics in the lab, you do all of that, that's great. But when I'm running an experiment as an individual, I have the ability to really analyze and make minor adjustments based on just that whole human knowledge. And sometimes it's a gut feel. And never underestimate the value of a gut feel, even in pharma, because that's really, without it, we wouldn't be where we are with medications. Somebody says, gosh, maybe if I just did this little adjustment. And AI isn't going to do that. Robotics aren't going to do that. They're going to say, this is the experiment you told me to run. I'm going to run it. If you want to run it different, I can help you with that, but it's an entirely different process as opposed to a human individual where I can adjust it on the fly. So I absolutely see a role for it, but you will should never make the human factor in R&D and in pharma.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you for that. And thank you for sharing how the first 6 months of the year has gone with you and your feedback in terms of the events you've gone to, and also in terms of your challenges in your new role as well. I mean, it's perfect timing to catch you because I didn't know you'd got the new role. So it helped the conversation even more to learn more about some other stuff. So good luck in the new role. I hope it goes really well, and good luck with your speaking engagements for the rest of the year as well. Hopefully, maybe not this year, but hopefully you and I can meet face to face in person rather than over a virtual screen. Maybe we can do that at some point, next year, hopefully. There's so many events that hopefully we can catch up with each other then as well.
I look forward to it. It would be wonderful to catch up in person.
Yeah, it will be. Well, thank you very much for that, and good luck with the non-profit as well, with the Rise Up organization. I think that's a great thing that you're doing as well, and I wish you lots of success with that as well. So Cindy, thank you very much. If people want to know more about what Cindy spoke about today, there will be links to the events that she's speaking at, but she's going to send them to me, so they will be above there. Plus, if you'd like to know more about the Rising Up organization, is it Rise Up or Rising Up? Is it Rise Up, isn't it?
Rise Up Project.
Yeah, yes. The Rise Up Project. Sorry, I'll get the branding right. So you've got to get it right. The Rise Up Project. I will put the link for that above the video as well. But if you've got any questions for Cindy as well about digitalization, I mean, look, she's looking after manufacturing, she's looking after R&D. I'm sure all the vendors are looking at this and great. I can send her loads and loads of ideas now of how to help her out in her new role. But if you've got any questions for Cindy, then feel free to put them on LinkedIn below the video. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer them, or send a message directly as well. So Cindy, lovely to see you again. Hopefully we can catch up maybe at the end of the year, do this all over again and find out how else things are changing in the wonderful world of digitalization, because I know it's constantly changing anyway. It's a very fast moving industry, that part of pharma certainly is anyway. So it'll be interesting to get your feedback on that.
Definitely. I would definitely, always a pleasure. So would love to get caught up again at the end of the year or early next year.
Fantastic. Look after yourself. I'll catch up with you soon, hopefully. And I hope you all found that useful. As I said, any questions for Cindy, feel free to put them below the video. I'm sure she'll be happy to see them and answer them as well. So until next time, as always, Cindy, look after yourself. And to you viewers, have a wonderful, safe, fantastic summer. And as always, stay well and stay safe. Bye-bye.